Hey guys, Sketchy here, and today I'm going to be talking about why a lot of people play games, honestly. Why people play games is its own topic, and it would probably be a good topic that I might delve into. Um, but the one thing that I know a lot of people play games for is combat. Combat is probably the core mechanic in almost every system. D&D specifically is very, very huge on it. And combat goes in a lot of ways. It goes from abstract to specific like D&D to abstract like the Fate system, where you really don't have a lot of combat sets. You really have one or two, which is fight and shoot, and that's ranged or melee. So the I guess it's best for me to go into D&D because that's the reason I wanted to talk about this. Recently, I'm running my game, my weekly game on Friday nights, and we recently got a new player. And he was kind of confused about one of the things we do, and I'll be the first to admit I don't play strict by-the-books D&D, but we use the 5-foot step as not triggering attacks of opportunity, and I'm not sure if it's in the book that way, but he had never heard this used, and it kind of confused him because he was like, well, what's the point of attacks of opportunity? Well, the way attacks of opportunity are is from sort of a meta, I think is the correct term, from sort of a meta thing. It's so that you can't, actually, no, this would be more role-playing. In role-play, your character can't just turn around and walk away from combat. I mean, he can, but most likely he's going to get stabbed in the back. So attacks of opportunity exist to create circumstances where what you're doing should be focusing on the fight, and if you choose not to do that, then you're going to take a knife into the gut, and that is very bothering me. I don't think that's proper grammar, but whenever blacks out like that. Oh well, I'm going to try and move and push through that. So the way we do it is if you can 5-foot step out of a threatened area, and this confused him because he's basically 5-foot step is a movement. And the way I kind of look at it is a 5-foot step is in combat. It's literally just taking a step to the side, taking a step back, forward, left, right, whatever direction you're choosing to move. So you can do that, and you can still be focusing on the task at hand. Usually to move 30 feet, or if you're going all the way 60 feet in the opposite direction, you're probably going to turn around and look over there while you're moving. You're not going to backpedal at full speed, especially in full armor. Oh my lord, it's hard enough for some people to do that just in plain clothes. Imagine doing that in a full suit of armor and your ass is falling over. But, so the reason, at least my explanation, is attacks of opportunity are when you are no longer focusing on the fight. And there's lots of ways around this. There's the tumble rule. There's the 5-foot step as mentioned. There's lots of feats that allow you to do it so that you're not diverting your attention. And this is all to kind of keep the game itself sort of in the role-play realism aspect. Because when you think about it, D&D isn't like your typical JRPG. It's not like, I'm going to use Dragon Quest because that's my favorite game series of all time. It's not like Dragon Quest where you line up on one side and the other team lines up on the other side, and then you take turns swinging at each other. It's not how it works. It is, but that's the game aspect and not the roleplay aspect. The roleplay aspect is your actions are taking place in the span of about 6 seconds. And this 6 seconds for each person kind of overlaps, which is why attacks of opportunity happen. This is why all sorts of things are allowed to happen within those turns. So they don't fully overlap, and someone will easily argue that well, that makes no sense. Why? How do they overlap at all? You might. The way I see it the reason I say it overlaps is because if I'm fighting you, I'm not going to let you hit me and then I hit you. I'm going to be swinging at the same time. And unless you're blocking, which there's very little rules on blocking that I can think of off the top of my head. So blocking isn't really taken into account a lot of the times, unless you do have a shield, but then you're just holding up the shield and, oh, that's the extra 2-3 points of defense is, oh, he hit your shield when he swung at you. I was going somewhere and I completely lost it. So with that 6 seconds, it also brings up another thing, attacks of opportunity in general. They're very iffy and weird. For instance, I was having a discussion. I was having a discussion with someone online, and I don't remember the specifics of the conversation, but basically, he was saying that he was trying to use realism to explain some things in the D&D universe. And I'm like, well, instant cast, someone shouldn't have the ability to attack you while you're making an instant cast spell. And he's like, what do you mean instant cast? Something that takes 6 seconds to do? Well, he didn't really factor in the fact that most spells that are a standard action take up half your turn. So you take 3 seconds. You can take 3 seconds to move, and a spell that is a standard action spell takes approximately 3 seconds. However, at the same time, swinging your sword takes approximately 3 seconds. So I basically was saying, how can you do one before the other? So there's some confusion in attacks of opportunity. They're necessary, and it also throws a lot of decision making in that. Okay, I can attack this guy, but it makes me think of a Fire Emblem game almost. You're sitting there and you're going to decide, okay, I can go attack this guy, but he's going to get a shot at me, and will I be able to survive his shot and his shot from this attack and the shot from the next one, from his own turn, which varies. Also, do I want to stand next to this guy for any longer, which is a big decision when you're a squishy mage or a slightly squishy ranger. So other games go much more abstract. The two systems that I've used outside of D&D are Rogue Trader and Rogue Trader and Fate. I played Shadowrun in the Fate system. The way the Fate system works, for those that don't know, is you have a couple skills, you have a couple aspects, and then you roll 40F, which is 4D fudge or 40 fate. And that's basically the plus and minus dice. You can also do it with D6. 5 and 6 are pluses, 1 and 2s are minuses, 3s and 4s are 0. So basically, you're just bullshitting how your combat maneuver, with your stats and with a little help from the dice, basically you're going to bullshit how your combat maneuver was better than whatever he's doing to defend against you. And I really like that system because it does work more into the roleplay aspect of combat. One of my problems personally is I am a very combat-heavy person. I feel like a session isn't going right, and this is something that's my problem. I feel like a session isn't going right unless combat has occurred at least once. My players will attest to this. I will throw a fight into every single session. I will find a way to do it, even if I don't need to. I think my last one, we had a very good role-playing session, and I threw in 2 minor fights. They didn't need to happen. One of them may or may not have something to do with the story. I'll let them decide later. But I kind of cram these things in there, and I'm not the only one. I'm sure a lot of DMs are this way. But the reason I like the Fate system is because it kind of blends the two. Even though I'm a very combat-heavy person, you can kind of do your combat stuff while still role-playing. So, for instance, like when I was talking about Shadowrun, we were playing in the Fate system, which is how I basically described. I threw 2 knives in the guy's neck, or in the shoulder, and crossed him across his neck. That's one of the things, and you get bonuses or minuses based on your skills. So, in my most recent game, I was playing a character named Torn Victus. One of his skills was, or one of his stunts, he also in Fate there's stunts, which are basically things you create to give yourself an advantage. One of my stunts, which my DM really got annoyed with, or he didn't get annoyed with, he was just like, this might be a little too powerful, is basically I could counterattack anything. If basically they'd roll and I'd roll, and if I rolled higher, they're the ones who took the damage. Usually that's not how it's supposed to work. But one of my other ones, I swear I just said the word and I'm forgetting it right now. One of my aspects was that anything in my hand is a weapon. Because my character was a Dragonborn swordsman, but he had an innate skill to take anything he picked up and use it as an effective weapon. And the way I would usually describe that is it's not very difficult to describe that. He picks this thing up, and the moment he has it in his hand, he can figure out, okay, am I going to be slashing with this? Am I going to be thrusting with this? So on and so forth. Usually slashing kind of things worked best for him. So what I would do is I'd roll my die, and then I'd say, okay, I'm too short. So I'm going to say, because the specific instance is there was a bunch of people press ganging some of our group. We were part of the Vistani, which is basically gypsies. The people in this town were kind of trying to press gang some of the Vistani into the guard or the military. Can't remember which. And what I was trying to do is like, okay, I don't want to make the guard hate us, but they're beating the crap out of our guys, and I need to get them out of there. So I grabbed an oar, and I started swinging him. Because I had anything in my hands as a weapon, I got a little bonus to that, so I was more effective in combat. Then there's kind of the middle ground. As I mentioned, I played Rogue Trader, and that we used the actual rules. And I feel Rogue Trader is a middle ground because it very simplifies combat. In basically all of our rolls were D100, which is very simple to do in the first place. But then we had specific melee and ranged skills. So there was a lot of abstract to it, but you could use your numbers to help you out. Less just BSing the DM. So I guess the big point I'm not really making a point. I just felt like talking about combat. Combat is probably the main reason I play games. I'm trying to get more into a role play kind of person, sort of the out of combat person. In combat, even though I don't care much about stats, I just try to do the most badass thing possible. But most games are heavily centered around it. I've seen. You have to go slay the dragon, and to do that you have to fight him. You have to go defeat the big bad guy, and usually to do that you have to go kill the guy. Not always. There are ways to defeat the bad guy without killing the bad guy, but usually, in my mind, if he's a good bad guy, the players want to kill him. And not only that, if you're doing a good enough job as a DM, and this is purely opinionated, if you're doing a good job as a DM, you're keeping this guy alive. And you're doing it in clever ways or interesting ways. For instance, the first time I had a fight with I brought my big bad guy into the fight. He basically had a lot of moves that could keep my players out of range of him, and he could do these at will. He is a homebrew class, which really confused some of my players. But throw in his personality, the best way I can kind of describe it is the personality I originally had for him was he was sort of Pagan Min from Far Cry 4, because I had played that around the time, so I kind of created this character, but his personality was, as one of my players described it, nihilistic. It's funny because he's the leader of a cult of the god Nihilus. So I kind of found that was perfect. It's like, you described the person who is nihilistic. The nihilistic person is the leader of a cult of Nihilus. That's pretty good. But basically, his combat-wise, I don't let them touch him as much as possible. He shows up, there is no combat. If combat is initiated, then he has every ace in the hole up his sleeve, because I don't want them to fight him yet. For instance, I used knockout gas, and I probably did it horribly wrong, but I don't care. I used knockout gas to kind of balance the playing field so that they couldn't just walk in, do the Vea push R and win. Oh my god, Vea's becoming fucking Karthus. Wow. Sorry about that. That was my little sidetrack, League of Legends. But yeah, it's one of those things where now I'm rambling, aren't I? The games are focused around combat. That's the whole point of the books, honestly, because a bunch of guys or girls, whoever, a bunch of people can sit around a table and they can basically write a movie plot all themselves, which is cool. That's basically what D&D is. That's the way I like to think it. It's a bunch of people coming together to write a story, but they don't want everything to go their way. Well, they probably do, but where's the fun in that? There's no challenge in that. So I throw a big guy who can punch a hole almost literally through an 8-foot-tall lion man's chest, and they have to deal with that. They have to work out the mathematics to do it, which is why I hate. Which is one of the things I hate about D&D in general. There's too many numbers, too many modifiers, too many bonuses. That's why it gets complex. That's why I get frustrated. One of my biggest downfalls, I'll admit, as a DM, is I don't come prepared. So my players will sit sit there looking as I make up the encounter, which usually results in a bad combat because they just knock them out real quickly. Yeah, I'm basically out of stuff to talk about there. So this is going to be a much shorter video than usual. I just kind of wanted to talk briefly about combat. As always, if you guys have literally anything to say, just say it. I have gotten 0 comments so far, but hey, that's starting out. I would always like advice. Advice for how I play, how I run my games, or just how I do these videos. If you guys have any suggestions for me, please do so. So until next time, game on, guys.